Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Energy. And we're in season 2, and this is episode 6. The time just goes so fast in this extreme heat that we've been having here in the UK for this summer, I presume. So this one, it's all about stress. A brilliant topic for what is happening. And these are literally bite-sized podcasts. So we hope to keep them to 15, maybe 20 minutes. We do try. So that it gives you some information and some helpful tools that can help you deal with what is going on. Because we have been in the energy field working for between us over 50 years, probably coming up to 60 nearly.
Yeah.
And the thing is that people talk about energy, they talk about healing, and it's like, what is it? What does it mean? What does it entail? And so this is literally our way of trying to unpack some of the complexities and make it so that you feel, yeah, I kind of get it. I'm interested in learning more. And if you do want to know more, then please do just email us and one of us will get back to you. So each of these episodes, we start the podcast with an affirmation and an affirmation. So, Jo, what's the affirmation?
So an affirmation, first of all, is a positive saying in the here and now that we repeat over and over so that our bodies take it on board as what is a new norm. So today's affirmation is: today I release stress in every breath. I choose calm, balance and peace, and my body responds with ease. And it's about saying that maybe 4 or 5 times. You can say it out loud or in your head, but it's about saying it every day consistently for at least 21 days. And the
Wonderful.
affirmation.
Yes. So, an affirmation, it's where we have a question word at the beginning. Usually it's a why. And it's where we get the brain to start looking around for why this might be true. And with it, ideally, you repeat it out aloud. I found just recently seems to be the best one. And I think it's because the vibration of it goes into the field more. And I say, ideally, 11 times in a row for the 21 days. And it's why is it becoming easier for me to respond to stress with more calmness? So, why is it becoming easier for me to respond to stress with more calmness? So, let's then move on to the topic, which is stress. Is it friend or is it foe? What do you think, Jo?
So I think it's both, and it's often misunderstood by people that when we mention the word stress, that everybody feels like it's got a negative connotation. But actually, sometimes stress is not a bad thing. So let's look at this from a positive. And opening discussion here we've got is, if people didn't feel like they needed to do things, nothing would ever get done. So you wouldn't get out of bed. You might not meet deadlines. How would you raise your children? Some people perform better under a little bit of stress. We need to have a certain amount of stress if danger comes, because we need to react to the situation so that we can keep ourselves safe. We need to sometimes achieve our goals. So without a little bit of stress, there might be no motivation, there might be no drive, there might be no growth in ourselves as a human being. And so in that instance, stress is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's about how do we manage that to maintain it at a level that then does not become overwhelming. So I think, when we talk about stress, let's explore this some more. Let's explore the positive stress a little bit more. And I know that there is another name for that we're not all aware of, isn't there?
Yeah, when we found it, I was a bit like, really? And it's called eustress, EU stress. And I was thinking, what does it mean? What does it mean? And then I realized it's about when you've got the euphoria. I mean, I wouldn't be euphoric about getting out of bed always, but it's linked in that way. So that is a new word for us and hopefully for some of you too.
Yeah.
So as I say, so an example for this could be like when you're planning a wedding. It's like a really happy event, but oh my goodness, it's one of the most stressful things. Going on holiday, yes, you really want to go, but you have to arrange everything in order to get there. Starting a new job, having a baby, launching a business, learning a new skill. I mean, they are all stressful, but they're positive as well. Because as you mentioned, it's about motivation, it's about sharpening our focus. It helps us to build resilience, to learn, does that work or does that not work? So that's like positive stress. It helps to encourage our growth. It creates an expansion of your vocabulary, your friendships. There's so many different things. And you could ask, think about a time in your life when you grew the most. And was it comfortable? For
Yeah.
me, not always.
Yeah.
What about you, Joe?
Yeah. So I think that, there is that situation. You've explained it and explored it really well. It's the it's the version of where stress and excitement meet.
Hmm.
So it is that you're really excited to do something, but your adrenaline is pumping a bit harder than you feel. You can feel your heart pounding. It's that kind of stress,
Yeah.
but it's interweaved with excitement and, and growth and positivity. And I think that helps in those situations, but it's when that turns,
Hmm.
when it becomes a negative or it becomes a distress on the body,
Yeah.
distress on the mind, distress on the nervous system. And that's when the body gets stuck.
Hmm.
It gets stuck in that alertness. It gets stuck in that vigilance. It gets stuck in that survival mode. It gets stuck in that protection mode. And the body then is unable to switch off into that relaxed rest state.
Hmm.
So it's the body gets locked into the fight flight mode. And I know that you and I both see clients who are stuck, absolutely stuck in fight flight. They are constantly on the go. They can't sit down. They can't relax. They can't sleep. And it's more than that. I know in the symptoms and concerns that people have when they're stuck in that distress with their nervous system in a stress mode. But, that's when it becomes detrimental
Yeah.
to the mind, to the body, to the spirit. And I think that that's when we need to start really looking at, we need to do something here that's going to help us.
Hmm.
So how do we know when stress has become harmful? What would you say regarding that?
Well, you've mentioned a few of them, but for me, it's like you feel like you're having to juggle all of these spinning plates, and you can't take your eye off one because if you do, everything's just going to fall apart. And I think, sorry, blokes, about this one, but the females over the last sort of like 40, 50 years, they've had to be everything. So they don't just no longer work at home, they have to do that and everything else. And then you blokes are not really sure what your role is. And so you're in this weird space of, am I here or, what am I meant to be doing? So there can be that. You can feel so tired and yet you keep going. And it's like, as you said, you cannot relax. You cannot let go. People might suggest, oh, do meditation. I can't, my mind's just too full. It I don't have the time even for 2 minutes. And it's constant and it's like the speech speeds up.
Yeah.
I know sometimes like when we get stressed, our voice will go much slower, but that's usually unusual, isn't it?
Yeah.
Usually unusual? Strange wording. But it's things like that, and as you say, they're not sleeping. That's a big one. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
we make that mountain out of the molehill in the middle of the night and we think we're going to have all these ideas, and I suggest to people they just have a pen and paper by the bed so that if something comes in and it's really in their mind, just write it down and say, I'll deal with it in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's the overwhelm. It's that complete sense of not knowing what to do. You've said it about the plate spinning. It's that suddenly every small task becomes a big task
Mhm.
because the body is in such overwhelm. You can't see the wood for the trees. You don't know what to do. Often there is a craving situation going on in when people are so stressed because they will need to fuel themselves.
Mm.
So they may reach for the chocolate, they may
Yeah.
reach for the crisps, the biscuits, or even the wine. They may go for exercise. We often see people saying, well, I'm relaxing because I go for a run. But actually, the run is feeding stress and it's just a distraction so that they don't think about the things that they constantly have on their mind. So it's still being locked into that distressed state.
Mhm.
So let's talk about the stress glass. So we may have different terminologies for this or different ways of explaining it. But the way that I describe it is it's like you have a glass of water. And we often talk about people who have their glass that's half empty or half full, but hey, it's half. It doesn't matter which way it goes. There's room, there's capacity to stretch or reduce. But over time, things can cause the glass of water to come near the top. And that's when we need to have the decompress, the relaxation to allow some of that water to be tipped out of the glass to bring it back to half again. So what kind of things tend to go in the glass? What would you say?
So I use a bucket. Same
Okay.
same thing, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But the thing is, yeah, so it can be like work stress. It can be relationship stress. It can be work, and relationship isn't just what's in the home, it's at your work, it's who you're interacting with. It's all of those things. And it can also be, like the government, because everybody that's working has an interaction some level. And that can create so many financial issues as well that are going in there. And I know you've got loads of things that else. I mean, I could say them all, but what are you gonna say?
So often we find generations become carers and
Mhm.
parents. So they're stuck between the two. They are caring for their elderly parents, but they're also looking after small children whilst also trying to live their own life. There can be financial worries, and I know that there's a lot of that around at the moment. It could be illness, it could be trauma, it could be environmental stress. So there's a lot of building going on around a lot of towns and villages. There's all of the pylons that are going up for the networks for phones, etc. And it could be hormonal changes that cause this stress. And it's the thing that causes the bucket or the glass to begin to become too full is the accumulation of stuff, the accumulation of everything and not being able to tip any of it out. So let's go back to that conversation of what factors can really add to this stressor that are not necessarily the present moment stressors. Let's talk about that a little bit more because I think some people may not be aware and often think that it's always in the moment that these things are occurring. But we both know that that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, often people will say, I don't know what's caused why I'm struggling. So they're like, we've got that self-blame thing that will go on there. But often, like you said, it's an accumulation, but it's an accumulation of what's happened to you in your lifetime, your beliefs, your emotions, the culture that is around you. It's what your ancestors have been through because all of that sits in our energy field. And we can find ourselves reacting to something and we're like so emotional, so distraught. And then you look at it and you think, well, I have no idea what that was about. But it's because of whatever happened has triggered off all of that ancestral, the cultural, the things from when you were little that never got dissolved, that didn't get cleared because you didn't have the emotional wisdom to be able to deal with it. And they're all the things that get trigger off. So you imagine that one thing happens now, and it's that whole vibrational pattern that can go on and it can wipe the floor with you. And then you
Yeah.
feel there must be something wrong with me.
Yeah.
I mean, how
And
many
that's,
times have we heard that?
I know. And that's when we hit the empty.
Yeah,
That's when we hit the empty button. So it's like there's nothing left to give.
yeah.
There's nothing left to give. There's no capacity to cope. There's no capacity to deal with anything that's big or little because the capacity, the energy reserves are depleted completely.
Mm.
And then somebody, friend or family might say, well, what you need to do is to go a walk or start exercising because that's going to help you to increase your calmness, your relaxation, your balance, but you haven't got the energy to even begin to do that. And I think that that is when you need to consider calling in some support, some help, an external factor that's going to begin to just give you that little bit of energy reserve for you then to take the next steps
Mm.
for what you need to do. So I think we have touched on this lightly today because
Mm.
we know how huge this is in this current environment. One is positive, one is negative. However, it is possible that we can say when we look at people, well, how come they can cope so well? And they've got much more going on with them than I have. How come they can cope and I can't? Why is that?
Well, things that go a lot again on what our ancestors have been through, what we've been through, who we've seen as we're growing up and who we emulate, you know. So if our mum and our dad or our carer is quite, I'm going to say highly strung, which sounds like a judgment, but I think it makes sense if you understand that part of like, and then you just learn, okay, that's the way to get through life. You have to
Yeah,
do it this way. You have to do that way. Whereas if you've had a carer who's very relaxed and goes with the flow and goes, do you know what? It always works out, and it does, then that person also learns to be that. But I often do find what interesting, and I don't know if you've noticed this, Joe, but I find that different generations are like the pendulum swing. So you might have like real strict, sort of like there, and then the next one's down go, I'm not going to be anything like that. So they go the other way, and then when they get older, they go, "Oh, I don't wanna be like that either." And so it just keeps seems to be, like, swinging backwards and forwards. So sometimes it can be through those different aspects as well that means that you will cope better than possibly others will. But it
yeah,
doesn't mean there's something wrong with you, per
yeah,
se.
yeah. So I think one of the things that we would both share with you is this, and this is very much linked to the work that we do, the energy healing work that we do, the kinesiology that we do, is in a moment, just pause. Just pause, be quiet and be still for just a moment and see if your body tells you anything, if it whispers anything to you, if it says you're knackered
Mm.
or you need to do something about your sleep or you need to have a break. You need to do something to support you here, replenish you a little bit. These aren't questions. These are ways that your body's stress can be your teacher, your motivator, your catalyst for change,
Mhm.
or a biggie, your wake up call. that your body is fed up with dealing with things as you have been doing. It knows that you can't carry on like this. It has had enough. And it is not forcing through that, not pushing through that, because actually that's when stress becomes your foe and not your enemy. Your friend, sorry, your friend,
Yeah.
and not your foe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So ignore the whispers. I'm going to use a big word here, at your peril, because actually they are your guide, your guardian, your protector, and they will teach you well. You got anything to add to that?
That was very powerful what you were saying. And I think the thing to remember is that when our body is reacting, when it is showing us that we're in that struggle, we're in that overwhelm, that's the time really. Ideally, we would have done it before, but we never do. We always wait until it's got to that point. But by dealing with it, then it stops it becoming even bigger in our systems and it can prevent us having further issues with relationships because a lot of the times it's because we're tired and we're overwrought that we maybe snap, that we maybe say something in a way that we could have dressed a little bit nicer. And, and that's the thing about stress. We all think, oh, well, we can manage, we can manage. And I'm not saying that we cannot, but why make it harder than one needs to?
And there's no shame in asking for help.
None, none at all.
Yeah. So we hope that that's given you an insight into stress as friend or foe, positive or negative, and also just becoming more aware of the signs when stress is becoming a little bit too much, is stuck in the system, that we're stuck in that fight flight mode, and that's the time to maybe just consider change because your body's trying to tell you something that it needs some help. So be aware of that. Take good care of yourselves. And we look forward to seeing you for our next episode, which is episode 7, which is coming up next month. And there we are going to delve deeper than ever before into the meridian energy system. So for now, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
Bye bye.
Bye.